Hey there guys, Micah Curtis here, the head of Sleeveless Comics, and welcome back to another video of mine. Right now it is the 10th of June when you're going to be seeing this, and I'm up late as usual working, but I figured I'd take a little bit of time to discuss an idea that's going around in the crowdfunding scene that I'd like to pick apart and give a little bit more detail and insight on. So some people that I'm friendly with, like Ethan Van Sciver and John Malin and others, oftentimes say that it would be a good idea for YouTubers to get in on the comic book game. And that the key to becoming successful in the indie comic scene at this point is to build a channel and then have a good comic book and yada yada yada. And I think that there's elements of this that aren't being completely considered here. So I don't think that there is really a guarantee to anything when it comes to independent comics. I think that there's a lot of factors as to why people do find the success that they do. Timing is one thing, concept is another, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at the trends that have gone on with certain YouTubers and their properties and why exactly they have been as successful as they are. So in doing so, hopefully we'll be able to come up with a better formula, because I am not of the opinion that having a YouTube channel suddenly is going to mean six figures. There's other things that go on. And by the way, if you guys are wondering, Micah, what the heck happened to your tooth? My upper denture, the acrylic failed. So I've got to patch that up tomorrow. But anyway, so what we're going to look at is we're going to look at several different comics. And kind of get an idea of why is it that they were as successful as they were, and then go from there. So let's first pick on my buddy Richard Meyer. And then I'm going to pick on me. And then we're going to talk about other books as well. So this is going to be a lengthy video, but I feel like for people that are interested in getting into the crowdfunding model, you know, this is going to be kind of tell you the do's and don'ts of how to approach it. So when you look at Richard C. Meyer, who is sort of a lot of people's go-to whenever they point to this sort of thing, Richard's had 10 campaigns, and we're going to go basically from the beginning and then look at several of them. So here we have Jawbreakers Lost Souls. This is the one that started it all. This one, $400,000 plus, 10,000 backers. This again was, you know, the comic too hot for Antarctic. It's the comic that Mark Waid tried to destroy. A lot of controversy that surrounded this particular book. Not to mention, this was the very first big Comicsgate. In fact, it might be the very first Comicsgate comic that ever really happened. I mean, yeah, it was, because not Wrecked Planet, Bloodhoney came after this, Ethan's first Cyberfrog effort since the 90s. If I remember right, it was only a couple. They were only separated by a few weeks, but so this had that advantage, not just being the first major Jawbreakers, you know, graphic novel, but also having the controversy surrounding it with the Mark Waid lawsuit. And, of course, you have John Malin's art on this as well. And then you have the very talented Brett Smith doing the color work on this. Brett is an impeccable colorist, to say the least. I just wish he would stop hanging around so many dickweeds. But anyway. So it ended up being a beautiful looking comic book. And the downside, though, has been is that several of Richard's books since then haven't really hit that. So Iron Sights did well. This is with Richard and Ibra Canales. Canales is a really good dude. This did 6 figures. And by the way, you're not going to see a campaign of Richard's not hit 6 figures in this for a bit. You've got God King, which was the follow-up to the previous Jawbreakers book. $251,000. Iron Sights, 2 Psychos. Again, Richard Dos Locos. Such a better title. Whatever, man. Also hit 6 figures. Expendables Go to Hell, though. This is a weird one. I thought this was going to do better than it did. Now, it's still open. You can still back it, by the way. And I would recommend you do, especially you got fucking David Doran doing the pinup. Like, fuck, man. But, I would have expected this to do a lot better than it did, because it's Stallone, you know? Not to mention it's such a novel concept. It's such a comic booky concept. The Expendables Go to Hell? Come on. Like, that's awesome. You would think that more would have happened with it, but I was honestly expecting Jawbreakers 1 numbers with this, and it didn't hit that. So, and then this is the one that kind of broke the streak. It's Pandemic. So what happened with Pandemic? Well, it was under-promoted. You know, a lot of people didn't really seem that interested in it either. And it kind of came out of nowhere. There was no setup for it. And it was just book. You know, there wasn't a whole lot to it. Even though it's a beautiful looking comic. You know? Good ink work and all this other stuff. This could have been something that sold really well, but it just didn't, for whatever reason. And then Richard's gone back and he's doing Jawbreakers again with Grand Bazaar, and he will probably hit, I would think, 200,000, but you're noticing the numbers going down. And again, why is that? Well, it's promotion. You know, Richard needs to honestly do more self-promoting. You know, he needs to do a lot more self-promoting, and yeah, that's basically it. That would be my big criticism of him. He needs to promote himself better. Now, I have the same problem. You know, Englewood, I could have promoted better than I did, and we'll get to that in a second. But the big thing, like, what was the reason that the first Jawbreakers was as big as it was? Timing, team, and controversy surrounding it. Everything since the early Gamergate days surrounding Richard has not been nearly as controversial. You know, he is a factor in comic books. You know, he is going to be part of the industry for a long time. You know, he's still making very good money. You know, he's just not making Jawbreakers 1 money. But the reason for that is because the controversies aren't surrounding him anymore. You know, this is probably around the level he's going to be at, which is a good spot. He's going to have about 3,000, 4,000 backers every single book, because he's such a popular figure. And people really like the Jawbreakers concept because it really is expendable. It's kind of the Expendables of comics, you know? It's these characters that are these sort of G.I. Joe feeling characters mixed with like maybe kind of a Wildcats feel or Team 7 or, you know, an Image property, basically, from back in the 90s. And they have that feel to it to where if you're a military person or a something along those lines, you're really going to dig what he's doing. You know, and this one, though, has an even more, like, superhero-y feel to it. Not to mention you've got Aaron Alfeche on the art, and Aaron's amazing. And I'm hoping that Aaron does this book for years to come, because that's a stable source of income. And we'll talk about the mercenary mindset later on when it comes to art, and why I disagree with that as well. But Aaron Alfeche is a great choice for a book like this. His art flows very well. It has a great sense of motion to it. which is going to be something that you're going to rely on in this particular type of a book. So, I apologize for the yawning. Good lord. Needless to say, though, that's sort of where Richard's been sitting. You know, I think if he self-promoted a little bit better, I think that he would probably be getting closer to 250 grand every book. So, I think he'll rebound, though, and get there. It's just, that's part of the thing. But, and again, like, that should answer why that's not hitting that. Now, me, when I launched Englewood, I was on a channel with 19,000 subscribers when this book launched. And now that channel is dying off, and, you know, I'm kind of glad that it is, because that channel was not fun to run. We'll just put it that way. I didn't like it anymore. And I'm much happier doing this. And with Englewood #1, even though I hyped this book up for close to 4 months, I could never get people to commit in big numbers. And I got a lot of help on this. Like, I did a ton of live streams. I was on Ethan's channel on Comic Artists Per Secrets quite a few times, so on and so forth. You know, and I've been on War Campaign and others. And it just took time for people to get used to me as a comic book writer instead of a talking head. And that, I think, is part of the reason why the campaign moved as slow as it did. Not to mention, a lot of other people didn't really understand why I went with the artist and the art and color team that I ended up, you know, going with on this book, as opposed to a more gritty style. You know, because that's sort of what people seem to expect from street level comics. I wanted a more style that was sort of like Ed McGuinness meets Baki the Grappler, you know? Or I should say Ed McGuinness by way of Baki the Grappler. I like that feel a lot more for a book like this. So, anyway, but obviously I didn't see gigantic success. Well, why is that? Well, I think had I done a comic called Micah and the Hatman versus the Dumb Commie, the Dumb Commie Alliance, and it was all channel memes, I think that it would actually have performed better. But that's not why I got into this. You know, I didn't get into this to do a me story. I got into this to rebuild superheroes. I saw people hating Batman, people hating Daredevil, Spider-Man, and all these other street-level sort of characters. And they wanted a good comic that was that type of a style. And then Iron Fist wasn't doing anything. They weren't doing anything with Shang-Chi either. So I'm like, let's do something new. Let's do something modern. You know, let's have a modern take on this trope. And that's what Englewood was. And it was just a hard sell at the time. But now we're at a point where the campaign's over. I'm getting more and more people saying, hey, I've seen Micah on live streams. I've seen Micah do this and that. I missed out on Englewood. Am I going to get to see this again? And I'm actually now considering doing a second chance campaign. You know? We'll have to see what happens there. But, needless to say, there is it's not an easy sell. Not to mention, at the time I was mainly promoting it, a lot of drama going on in the indie comics community that really drowned out everybody who was an up-and-comer. I don't like the term small creator. I like up-and-comer, because myself and other people were building something. We're building the foundation and then building on top of it. You know, to say small creator limits you. You know, there will be a day where I'm making 6 figures on campaigns. I have no doubt of that. I don't know if it's going to happen today or if it's going to happen 5 years, 10 years from now. But it will happen. You know, it's just about building that foundation. It's just about being consistent and being good to your fans. Dancing with the people who brought you to the dance, and never listening to Doug TeNapel. But Englewood #1, you know, was exactly that. It was that part of rebuilding the superhero. Another one is Peregrine Wings of the Falcon. You know, these guys, my friends over at Grade Point 5, I couldn't be more proud of them. But here's the thing. These guys, right book, right time, they don't have a gigantic audience. You know? I don't know if there's ever been a graded show where they've had this many people, 860 people, in a live stream at once. But people gravitate towards what they're trying to do with Peregrine. Again, their whole goal is to reconstruct the superhero. Not to mention you've got amazing art. I love this cover by my friend Preston. You got amazing art by Doug Franchen, amazing colors by Farron and Eliza. It's an amazing book. You know, this is better than a lot of the stuff that you see at the big two. You know? So, when it comes right down to it, there is a, it's right book, right time, with the right, and it resonates with people. People want to see the superhero rebuild, you know, and this is a good way to do it. And again, the guys over at Graded shared the same sort of vision that I did, which is inevitably why I think so many people demanded this right here to be a crossover, you know, is the Englewood Peregrine comic, which I'm gonna probably start writing next week, you know. It's going to be an amazing book. I have a feeling with this book, we're going to cross 1,000 backers fast. I think that this is going to be a huge hit. People are going to love it. And not to mention, like, you just look at, like, this compared to Brian's pencils and inks in the last one and his line work. Like, this is, like, the ink, like, there's not a ton of inking on this. I think there's some more we could consider. But the inking that he has done is looking really good, like, here in the shadows of the cape and her hair and all this other stuff, you know? So, there's obviously room where we're all going to improve, but man alive, like, we really have something there where people are really looking towards something fantastic, and they dig the idea that there are those of us who want to rebuild this industry from the ground up. Another one from I don't think Dan Fan is Comicsgate, but she is a YouTuber. She's got about 34,000 subscribers, and this is her second go around with Orgasm Girl. This time it has a much more humble goal of just 5,000, and she nailed it within a day, which awesome job, by the way. But her first campaign didn't quite hit the finish line. The original goal was 11,000, if I recall correctly, and it didn't hit for whatever reason. Maybe it was the timing, maybe it was people just didn't get used to the concept. I don't know. I'd actually have to talk to her about that. But needless to say, again, it shows you that just being a YouTuber is not enough, you know? So you would ask, like, why are some of these other ones so successful? Well, the case of the Littlest Umbrella. This one is one about the YouTuber himself, so people who are already into the channel and that personality are probably going to like that. Adam Friended and PSA Sitch are also doing their own comic called Supervillains Anonymous, if I recall correctly. And that one, I think, already has over 1,000 people on the email sign-up list. Like, that's going to be a big book. But that's because it's starring the caricatures of the show, you know? And it's basically a show tie-in. This sort of thing, from what I can understand, is kind of spinning off into its own thing. And then, of course, another case for the Littlest Umbrella is almost at the same amount that they made last time. You know, it's only 18,000 away, which seems like a lot, but for a campaign like this, with a following like Tug has, I don't really think it's much of a stretch. He's going to hit that and then go beyond. But he's a humble dude. He doesn't expect it, you know? But again, it's about the guy. It's about the character of the guy. And it's something that is easy to get your hands into. Another one that's right book at the right time is Blade Devil from my friend Raging Golden Eagle. Now, I've known RGE for a while. Motherfucker bought me one of the worst pineapple pizzas I've ever eaten in my lifetime. I think it was fucking nasty. But Blade Devil, right book at the right time. And he did great numbers on it. But why is that? Well, he has an anime fan base. He's doing a manga-inspired book. And on top of that, his fan base loves them some big anime titties. And that's exactly what he's throwing in their face. You know, I mean, there's even a cover that is basically like, yeah, it's the lead character topless. You know, like, it's titillation sells. Like, right here as well, you know? There's going to be a nude poster. You know, that sort of thing is not, you know, it's something that's going to make money for the right audience, and he has the right audience. That is the goal, you know? And it could end up being an incredibly well-written thing. I don't know. I took a chance on it. I'm interested to see what RGE can do with it. Maybe he's got some really good writing talents. But the point that I'm trying to make is that it's not guaranteed that you're going to have continued returns. If you do, it's got to be right place and right time. And the question that you have to ask is this what comic book fans are going to want long term? You know, are they doing it just because it's basically what I would say is kind of a type of merch, like these two books are for Tug, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Make money while you can. But or is it going to be an attempt to rebuild the superhero? And I think that there's going to be, and this is just my prediction for the future, is two things. First, there is the potential, if a bunch of YouTubers get in on the comic book game, for them to get a ton of backers and then it just be a cash grab. You know, it's just something that makes a lot of money, and then people read it and something about it fucking sucks. And they're like, fuck, man, why did I invest in this? You know? Who do I want to pick on? Let's pick on the Quartering because he's fat, and if he put on a sweater that was purple, he would look like Grimace. Let's say the Quartering did a comic book, and he tried to be creative. He tried to actually, like, write a story. Now, he doesn't strike me as a creative person, but let's say that he did, and then it comes out and it's terrible. Well, why is it bad? You know, maybe he just doesn't have the talent. And the thing about this, and this is something that a lot of people don't really think about, is that making a comic book takes fucking talent. You know, you have to be good at it. You have to be good at least some element of the process. Writing, inking, coloring, what have you. Lettering. And if you're not, people are going to sniff you out. They're going to realize that you're not the real deal. They're going to realize that you're not there to actually give them something that they want long term. You're there to make some quick buck and basically have a comic about you to feed your ego. Or you're going to try to do something that's, you know, creative, and it's just going to fall flat. And with me, I kind of lucked out in the sense that I've been writing for a decade now as a journalist, and then I just happen to have the skills to do fiction. But that's sort of where it's at, you know? I think that what I would rather see from YouTubers is not necessarily them try to do something that maybe they're not comfortable with. Like, if you're not... Let me just put it out there, as any YouTubers watching this. If you put a concept on paper and you can't explain it to somebody in 4 sentences, don't do it yourself. Hire a writer. Because here's the thing. A lot of YouTubers are critically minded. And a critically minded person is not always going to be a good writer. In fact, sometimes it's a detriment because you overanalyze everything that you're doing. And if you do that, there's no room for creativity. You end up creating a sterile, boring product that took no risks and tried nothing interesting. And that's a point that I generally make about people like the Quartering or Mauler or people like that, is that even if they are creative in some way, because their mindset is so focused on criticism, they're not going to be able to express themselves properly without constantly pulling the reins back. That is what I would call an editor's mindset. They're the person that has the capacity to be creatively minded to an example, but, 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 to a point, but, 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 where they find themselves is a position where they are not really the best in conceptualizing an idea or really putting pen to paper. But once somebody has put pen to paper, they're really good at refining that for them. That's where they should sit. So that is something that I think needs to be considered. Is that, it's like, to counter what Ethan said, thinking that it would be foolish for all these YouTubers not to do comic books. I think it would be foolish for them if they wanted to diversify their income to not do a comic book, but it doesn't mean that they should write it. I would say the Lady Alchemy route is the best route. Now, not the way that Martina originally did things, but the way she's doing them now. Base concept and things like that, she came up with. But she's got my friend Von Klaus doing the writing. She's got a magnificent artist on it. And as such, the initial concept that she had is going to be fleshed out much better than what she probably could have done on her own. And she remains in the creative control of just sort of guiding the ship. That's what editors do, And that's, I think, where a lot of YouTubers, if they're going to get into this, should consider it, is maybe I shouldn't write this. Maybe I should just be an editor. Maybe I should give the base outline and concept to somebody else, and then I come in and help refine things the way that they need to be steered, You could still be the project lead as an editor. I'm the project lead on all of my books, but I'm not the editor. I'm actually just the writer. My business partner, Hatman, he's the editor. So, either way, that's what I would say, is that just getting YouTubers to just blindly do comic books is a recipe for disaster, because they might not know what they're good at. And if they fail right out of the gate, it's like a handshake. First impression matters. I'm lucky that Englewood was a good first impression, that people like it. The people who are neutral, the people who have no stake in the game, are telling you, yeah, it's a good book. It's not quite greatness yet, but you can get there. And goddamn if I ain't gonna try. So, needless to say, that's my thoughts on that. Is YouTube is not necessarily a guaranteed long-term way of making money in comic books. It's it can help you find an audience. It can help you do that. But on the flip side, if you fuck it up, that audience is not going to put the money forward again. And it's not a guarantee that you're going to get huge money, So, that's my thoughts on that. If you enjoyed this content, please do not forget to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys watching this. And before I take off, just a reminder, 3 nights, 4 days, this is the last call to get on the mailing list for this comic book. If you do not sign up for the mailing list today before we launch this evening, you are going to miss out. So allow me to bring this back up so that you guys can see it. Is on top of the comic itself, which will be 44 pages, you have a bonus art booklet that is going to be available for purchase as well, a poster that you can add on, original art tiers, or rather I should say comic page tiers, and then, of course, just brilliant work from myself, and then, of course, the amazing art of Preston Acevedo and the great color work of Oliver Lee Arce. So it's going to be an amazing comic. Get on the list, join the crusade, hang out with us tonight, 8 p.m. Central Time. If we get past 15,000 in one day, I'm going to eat a bunch of hot wings, or attempt to eat a bunch of hot wings that are basted in hentai hot sauce. Yeah. So, with all that said, my name is Micah Curtis, also known as Vanilla Grod, the head of Sleeveless Comics. I'll see you next time.